we can summarize term limits into a very simple quote. If folks across America send somebody to the House of Representatives or the Senate, and they're coming to Capitol Hill, obviously, with an agenda. If they have not been able to address that agenda in two terms, then it's probably not addressable. So they should go back home, and the voters from their home district should send fresh blood, fresh people to Washington, D.C. But what's been happening for the entire history of the country is every politician who gets elected to the House of Representatives or the Senate immediately tries to turn it into a lifelong career, as if they don't have any real agenda. They just simply want to be part of the powerful governing body of the day. And we have lots of examples of this, and we've always had lots of examples of this. But we've got McConnell from Kentucky. We've got Schumer from Kentucky. Today we even have Rand Paul from Kentucky. We've got Pelosi from California. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But what happens when the power gets concentrated in the old hands, as it were, it becomes that much more difficult for the government to keep up with the times and to, of course, solve the problems of the day. So one of the very first things the Quigley administration is going to do is to start the process of introducing a two-term limit. 2 terms for the Senate, 2 terms for the House of Representatives. There are already 2 terms for the White House, of course, everybody knows. We also need to do away with lifetime appointments for the Supreme Court. That's another nightmare. When the country was established, everything moved at a snail's pace or slower. So it made sense to offer lifetime appointments to the Supreme Court justices. Today, it makes 0 sense. So essentially what we have today is a Supreme Court that are pretty much obstructionist. They constantly and continuously overrule the will of the American people on issue after issue after issue. And that was not the intention of our forefathers. The whole intention of the forefathers was to provide smart government balanced amongst a number of institutions and a number of hands. But they never meant for Congress members to make a lifetime career out of it, or for the president to become dictator or king. And then, of course, they did intend for life appointments for the Supreme Court. But you got to remember, when those laws were originally passed, most people died in their 50s, if they were not dead in their 40s. Today, we've got folks living to 70s or 80s. So it's just totally an acronym from history that needs to be brought to an end. So how does the Quigley administration or the independents deal with term limits? Well, it's going to require a constitutional amendment. So essentially, we're going to have to get a bill through Congress, through the Senate. The president will sign that bill, and then it's got to go off to the states. And it has to be ratified by a majority of the states. And that is the process of a constitutional amendment. So it's going to be a lot of work. But stepping back from that, it really tells us that the Independence Party needs to reach out across America as we conduct this campaign for the next 2.5 years and find as many new independent House members as we can that will join the ticket, so we can also bring those folks to Congress. And we know that 1/3 of the Senate seats are up for re-election, and we want to have candidates competing as independents for all 1/3 of those Senate seats. We know Bernie Sanders is an independent. He tends to vote on the Democratic side of the aisle. But it's a process. These constitutional amendments don't happen, in the course of a week. I mean, they could if everybody in the country is on board, but as one could imagine, we're going to have a lot of fight, because the Republicans have been using state legislative processes to actually put a check on many different areas of the legal system and many different areas of reform. So there's a tremendous amount of overall improvement that we can make as a country, but it's going to be fought tooth and nail. And essentially what I've just said here is the outline of what we're facing when we talk about term limits. But those reforms need to be made, and they need to have already been made decades ago, because we're suffering the consequences of entrenched power. So we have to eliminate that.